is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
There's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled, dedicated police units.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Is raiding the home of a suspected insurance cheat.
The officers have found a handgun. Quite possibly everything in this house has been purchased from the proceeds of crime.
An aircraft manufacturing giant fights a fraudster.
I've seen an awful lot of these over the years, but it was still pretty staggering to watch.
And a smashed up sports car is at the centre of a whodunit mystery.
He was saying the rear end was completely smashed up. She said there was minimal damage to the rear end of the car.
Photocopying can be pretty dull. Sheet after sheet after sheet, followed by collating and stapling ad infinitum. Imagine doing it all day. That's what Adam Roberts used to do for a commercial airline manufacturer. His career wasn't always this humdrum. Up until October 2007, he used to make these. Some of the biggest planes in the world.
Adam Roberts was working as an apprentice aircraft electrician. He was working in an aircraft factory, helping to apply parts to aircraft wings. He could have expected to earn anywhere between $30,000 going up to $50,000 a year, depending on where he was working and his experience. The accident was on the 15th of October 2007, and what he said was that he slipped on debris while he was working. The injury was a wrenching injury to the back, a soft tissue injury which was alleged to have caused some sort of spinal problems.
His injuries worsened over time, badly affecting his everyday life.
Before the accident, he'd liked to go horse riding, playing golf, cycling and other such activities. But as a result of this accident and his supposed disability, he could no longer do that. He said they had to use a crutch all the time, and often two crutches.
Due to his injuries, Adam was no longer capable of doing his job as an aircraft electrician.
He tried it, but said he found it too physically demanding. He was saying that he was at a big disadvantage in the labour market because he was disabled, and it made a difference to his ability to work in future. It imperilled his ability to work in future.
Roberts, now stuck in an admin role, decided to make a claim against his employer.
He was claiming for past care afforded by his family, for unspecified aids and equipment, and he was also claiming for future loss of earnings, future care and future equipment, and there was also a claim for future accommodation costs. My assessment of the overall value of the claim, including legal costs, was £670,000.
It was a massive claim. To see it through, Roberts would need to provide medical evidence of his disability.
When he issued his legal proceedings, he supported his proceedings with two medical reports, one from a consultant orthopaedic surgeon and one from a consultant psychiatrist. And both of those doctors concluded that he had suffered injury in this accident and that that injury was responsible for his continuing disability.
He looked to have a solid case. Just one more thing, the insurer's medical examination.
When I got the papers, I went through them in detail, and there were a couple of things about the claim that raised my suspicions. There was no hard clinical pathology that our medical experts could find to justify the complaints. That was part of the issue for us in looking at this case very hard. There was a suggestion when he'd been examined in hospital that a test which is used to detect exaggeration had resulted in some not entirely straightforward responses.
Nothing conclusive had come from the medical reports, and with suspicions raised, the insurer set out to discover the real physical state of Adam Roberts. They hired a private investigator.
He was put under surveillance for a period of 3 days in June 2011. From our point of view, the surveillance on the 17th of June was the crucial surveillance. What it showed Mr. Roberts doing was, after having come home from work on the Friday afternoon, it was a Friday afternoon, he then drove to a house which we now know to have been a house his mother had just bought.
In accordance with his claim, we should expect to see a badly disabled Adam Roberts using crutches and only capable of walking short distances at a time. Here he comes now.
I've seen an awful lot of these over the years, but it was still pretty staggering to watch.
An industrious Roberts emerges from the house and proceeds to dump the contents of a gutted bathroom into a skip.
Firstly, he was shown putting some large pieces of board into the skip, and not just putting them in, but ramming them in, breaking them on occasion, and sometimes bashing them on the side of the skip. Then, I think, as I recall it, he and his mother brought out a bath between them, but he was the one who picked it up and upended it into the skip. He brought out a lavatory system, there was a wash basin, there was a fire surround that he spent quite a lot of time bashing around and trying to get into the skip. There were bags of rubble, and you could see from the way that he was carrying them that they weren't lightweight bags of rubble, they were builder's sacks, and they were heavy, and he was emptying those into the skip. There was dust everywhere. And there were a number of items which he was trying to break up and bashing against the side of the skip. And it culminated, as I recall, with Mr. Roberts actually jumping into the skip and actually tamping stuff down with his feet, jumping up and down on the stuff a little bit, and generally trying to settle stuff down the skip by being in it. And that's the point at which, I just thought, oh dear.
Roberts had tried to get a massive payout from the insurers. They weren't happy. They decided to take him to court.
The reason for doing that was that we and the insurers felt it was necessary to send a message to people that they just can't do this and expect to get away with it. The judges said that they felt that he was somebody who was prepared to lie to achieve his aims.
Adam Roberts was found guilty of contempt of court. He was sentenced to 6 months in jail.
It seems such a shame. He'd qualified as an aircraft electrician, and to lose all that for the sake of exaggerating his symptoms is inexplicable to me, really. I just don't understand why he did it. No, I don't think insurance fraud is ever worth the risk. It is fraud. People have, I think, kidded themselves into thinking they won't be found out. They will get found out, and when they get found out, as Adam Roberts' case shows, the consequences are very, very serious indeed. You can end up ruining your life. And for what?
An injured man makes a £17,000 claim.
He stepped out of the car and put his foot onto the manhole cover, and the manhole cover collapsed.
And a fast car takes away.
In most cases, they normally take a hammer to the back of it.
Insurance fraud is on the rise, and if you have insurance of any kind, you're footing the bill. But the fraudsters have an ominous enemy.
IFED is a 35-strong unit that works tirelessly to hunt down and prosecute insurance fraudsters wherever they may be throughout England and Wales.
Through a combination of investigation, industry connections and surprise, they've made over 300 arrests and stopped millions of pounds from going to the criminals. Money which ultimately goes back in our pockets.
If you're thinking of committing insurance fraud, I'd say to you, think again, because there's every chance that IFED could come knocking on your front door.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
It's 7:35 a.m. In an attempt to stop the activities of a suspected fraud gang, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department is simultaneously executing raids at multiple addresses. IFED's Declan Malone and Simon Stiles are heading to the address of the suspected ringleaders.
This morning we're off to an address which is the home address of the main suspect in a fake claims management company where he's setting up fake policies online and making claims on accidents that have never occurred, and it's believed that the perpetrators have managed to have achieved something like £250,000 from their claims so far. The guy should be at his home address with his wife, who's also going to be arrested. It's one of 6 search warrants that are being issued simultaneously.
Alex, hi. Yeah, we're just plotting up now. We'll be good to go in about 5.
Because it's the house of the suspected ringleaders, as well as making arrests, they expect to find potential evidence of the gang's activities. It could be a big search. Declan and Simon are joined by representatives from the Ministry of Justice, local police, and the head of IFED, DCI David Wood.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please.
It's only 7:40 a.m, but the neighbours are out and about and agitated by the presence of the raid team. DCI David Wood steps in to stop the situation escalating.
Hello. Come here.
Come down, please, and talk to us, please. Thank you.
Hiya, I'm Declan Malone from the police. Can I speak to Mum or Dad? It's all right. Yeah, we need to come and speak to them. It's okay. Can I come in, please? We just need to come in and just get people out of the street so they don't get into trouble. Hello, police.
Hello, police.
IFED finds both suspects in the house. One of them is a familiar face.
The individual arrested today, we believe he is one of the main individuals involved in this particular insurance scam. He has been convicted before of a like-minded crime.
So now I'm arresting you on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud and money laundering.
Both suspects are taken to a local police station for questioning. That's half the job done at this location.
We've taken away the main suspect and his wife. He's been arrested for conspiracy to defraud and for money laundering. She's just been arrested for conspiracy to defraud.
IFED can now begin a systematic search for potential evidence. It's a 3-story townhouse. It could be a big job.
It's important that we do everything, we don't leave any stone unturned. If we're doing a search, we want to do it properly. That's why we called in the experts who are fully trained and qualified in the current search techniques, even better than us.
The townhouse is new and fairly high spec. Its quality raises the suspicions of IFED's financial investigator, Simon Stiles.
From the inquiries that I've made, I can see no trace of the family, any member of the family actually working. Just to check on whether they're actually in receipt of any benefits. But this house, looking around it, there's a lot of nice stuff, whether it's clothes or material goods, and it's quite possible that everything in this house has been purchased from the proceeds of crime.
Head of IFED, DCI David Wood, has received news from the other location of today's raid.
Just received some breaking news from one of the addresses. The officers have found a handgun. They're not sure exactly what it is and what it isn't, so they've called out the local police firearms team to come and make it safe and identify exactly what the weapon is.
IFED makes big discoveries in a small room.
In the wrong hands, deadly. It's upsetting and annoying to see, especially with that's so close to where all the children are running next to their bedrooms.
This is a street in Shrewsbury. It looks fairly innocuous. Most people would feel safe walking down it. But watch your step. In 2012, local man Peter Finney was badly injured here. The culprit, a manhole cover.
Peter Finney was a passenger in a car, and he stepped out of the car outside the Lion Hotel in Shrewsbury and put his foot onto a manhole cover, and the manhole cover collapsed and he injured his leg.
The manhole was on private land. Its upkeep was the responsibility of a hotel. The hotel's insurer would have to bear the brunt of Peter Finney's claim. They had a look at the details.
He had soft tissue injuries to his leg. It's something which is not visible, so it is, as it says, soft tissue whiplash is the most obvious example that we get, but it's anything which is not easy to detect or easy to see.
His injuries were severe enough to force him off work. Loss of earnings and mounting medical bills led Finney to seek compensation totalling £17,000. For a claim of this size, the insurer needed to know more about the accident.
We asked him to give us some more information, and eventually he provided a photograph of the manhole cover.
This is what a well-maintained manhole cover looks like. The one Peter Finney fell down looked like this. It seemed as though the hotel had been negligent with the upkeep of the manhole. With cast iron evidence like this, Finney could look forward to getting his payout. But not yet. Peter Finney's claim had a few irregularities. Chasing further information, the insurer decided to visit the scene of the incident, the hotel in Shrewsbury. Since Peter Finney's alleged accident, the hotel had replaced the manhole cover with a new one.
Although the manhole cover at the hotel was intact, they actually thought they'd replace it just to be on the safe side.
But luckily for the insurer, the manager had kept the old one. And when they saw it, it turned Peter Finney's claim into a criminal investigation.
The manhole cover that is in the photograph is a completely different construction. It's quite obvious to anybody that you wouldn't need forensic examination to see these were different manhole covers. And we referred him straight to the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
Finney was in big trouble. Since its inception, IFED's team of over 30 specialist detectives have made over 300 arrests. Peter Finney was in their sights.
Detective travelled to Shrewsbury and arrested Mr. Finney and interviewed him at the local police station. Mr. Finney stuck to his original story and maintained that the injury had been suffered due to the stepping on the defective, as he called it, manhole cover.
Faced with a stubborn suspect, IFED decided to take the case to court, causing Peter Finney to crack.
On the 31st of January 2013, Mr. Finney attended Shrewsbury Magistrates Court and entered a plea of guilty to the charge of fraud by false representation.
Peter Finney was sentenced to 18 weeks imprisonment, suspended for 12 months, and ordered to do community service.
It would have impacted on the hotel because there they are running their business when somebody chooses them to be the victim of a fictitious claim, and ultimately will impact on the premium that they'd have to pay had this person been successful in getting away with their scam.
Jeremy Clarkson doesn't care for them, but many do. Porsche cars have always been associated with speed and style, and most people would agree they're not cheap. So when one takes a shunt, it generally results in a big insurance claim. The black car in this tunnel is a Porsche. Right behind the Porsche is a van belonging to Doncaster County Council. The driver of the Porsche, Mark Smith, is pretty annoyed right now, as the white council van has just smashed into the back of it. Luckily, the road layout meant the crash wasn't at high speed, so no one was seriously injured.
At the time of the accident, according to our expert report, the van wasn't going more than 30 miles an hour, nor was Mark Smith.
Even at that speed, fixing a Porsche doesn't come cheap. The repair costs came to £27,000. Mark Smith also filed a claim for whiplash and for the cost of a hire car until his was fixed. All in, the insurers of the council van were potentially facing a £100,000 claim.
He would have got a high-end vehicle because of the Porsche he was driving, so he would have got like for like. So you're looking at a lot of money each day. It soon starts adding up.
Before they could pay out on the personal injury claim and hire charges, the insurers needed to make sure all of the claim's paperwork was in order. That's when they spotted a problem.
They became suspicious when they obtained a statement from the van driver. When her statement came in, there was ambiguities between what she was saying and what Mark Smith was alleging. He was saying the rear end was completely smashed up. She said there was minimal damage to the rear end of the car.
It was a big difference in opinion. Did the Porsche suffer massive rear end damage, or just a small dent? The insurance company sent out a specialist examiner to look at the vehicle and find out whose statement was more accurate.
When the examination took place, photographs were taken. Now, the rear end of this vehicle is completely smashed up. Pictures can prove that.
The Porsche looked to have been severely damaged, which backed up owner Mark Smith's version of events. But before they paid out, there was one last question. Why did the driver of the council van say that the Porsche drove off with a small dent in its rear? The insurers had one last thing to look at.
The tunnel itself has got CCTV both at the beginning and at the end of the tunnel.
When they played the CCTV footage, this is what they saw.
What happened was Mark Smith came into the tunnel in the outside lane, which was completely clear, no traffic in front of him whatsoever. Van was driving on the near side lane. He suddenly pulls in front of the van and then slams on his brakes and does an emergency stop, causing the van to then rear shunt him.
It looked like what's known in the business as a slam-on, a simple form of crash for cash. But Smith claimed to have good reason for his drastic manoeuvre.
He was stating that he pulled into the near side lane and had to do an emergency stop because the vehicles in front of him were braking. When you look at the CCTV, they weren't braking. You could see a slight brake on the vehicle in front of him, but not enough for him to do an emergency stop.
Mark Smith's case was falling apart. And if DC Kate Sibley needed one further piece of evidence against his claim, she had it. Remember that photo of his Porsche with the rear end smashed up?
That's what he was stating happened in the tunnel, but it can be physically seen. Him coming out of the tunnel, the spoiler is still totally intact, very little rear end damage compared to what was seen in the photographs.
The driver of the council van had said all along that the Porsche had driven away with a minor dent to its rear, and she was right. In order to maximise his claim, Mark Smith had further damaged his vehicle after the incident.
In most cases, they normally take a hammer to the back of it, to the rear end of it, and smash it up like that. In this case, I don't know how he did it, and he never stated how he did it.
Mark Smith pleaded guilty to 2 counts of fraud by false representation and was given a suspended 6-month jail term in order to complete 140 hours of unpaid community work.
Crash for cash is a big business at the moment. The implications can be quite serious and have been in certain circumstances. Worst case scenario, somebody dies. And I think they got away with it for too long, but hopefully not anymore.
Today, IFED is executing multiple simultaneous raids.
Come down, please, and talk to the police.
It has warrants for 6 members of a suspected fraudulent accident management gang.
Just received some breaking news from one of the addresses. The officers have found a handgun.
Here at the address of the man thought to be the ringleader, the team has made 2 arrests and has begun an extensive search of his 3-storey townhouse. IFED's financial investigator Simon Stiles is on the 1st floor of the house. His attention has been drawn to a box room.
This is a ceremonial sword. In the wrong hand, deadly. It's upsetting and annoying to see, especially with that so close to where all the children are in, next to their bedrooms.
Having been drawn to the room, IFED conducts a thorough search of its contents.
This is the hub of the enterprise we're talking about, the insurance scam. This may well be where it happened.
It turns out the room is crammed with documents relating to vehicle insurance policies.
One note here is a vehicle registration number. This relates to a vehicle that is currently sat on the driveway of this premises that I know from my investigation has been used, or at least the registration number and the details have been used in contrived accidents.
The car is meticulously searched for further evidence.
We noticed on the front passenger seat there was some documentation, and even looking through the window we could see that was in relation to a road traffic accident, which were interesting, obviously in connection with the inquiry. So those bits of paper have been seized while we searched the vehicle, and they are entered into the evidence chain.
From its research, IFED knows a bit about the car's history. According to insurance records, the car has been involved in several bumps and scrapes. Each time, the owners received hundreds or thousands of pounds for the claim. The car is, at most, worth a couple of £1,000s. The children's bedrooms also have to be searched.
It's a shame when you're turning someone's bedroom upside down, especially with the girls. But unfortunately, people do hide things in strange places, and what I'm going to tend to do is be sensitive as possible and look at things, and if I don't need them, I'm going to put them back exactly where I found it, so there's no disruption to their lives. We're looking at like SIM cards and and credit cards and things like that can be stuck underneath. Things that you wouldn't normally, if you open a drawer, you wouldn't normally see.
Simon has found something of interest in a school satchel.
This book, as I've opened the first page, it's got a line here, cheap quotes online, and a phone number. As we're here for insurance scams, it may be something that will later may well incriminate that individual.
Simon heads to the box room and removes what may be the heart of the operation.
This, I believe, is a storage unit that any history of any of the contrived accidents, any of the claims, any of the setting up of the claims management companies. There's been a number of claim management companies that have been set up, so anything that has been used in the contrived accidents may well be stored here. So this may well be hold the key really to what we're all about.
Today, DC Declan Malone is the exhibits officer. Anything taken as potential evidence has to pass under his nose.
So far we've received vehicle documentation, logbooks, we've received computers, we've also got storage data devices that have been seized, so we're quite happy with what we've got so far.
Declan has found some items of interest on the top floor of the house.
He's got a contingency plan. He's got 2 driving licences in his own name, current ones, and also he's done the same with passports. He's got 2 of them, both British passports, in his own name with the correct details.
Owning 2 passports from one country is highly suspicious and often indicative of criminal activity, so Declan is bagging them up. Every room of the suspected ringleader's house has been searched. IFED has found a bootload of potential evidence. This part of the multiple raid is done, and there's been a good result at the other raid location.
Further breaking news, at another address we've uncovered a CS spray canister. So a person's been further arrested for possession of that article. And at a separate address they found a selection of baseball bats and balaclavas, which we obviously suspect to be gang-related paraphernalia. So again, they'll be in the evidence chain and questions will be asked of the suspects when they're interviewed later today.
A good day at the office for DCI Wood and his fraud-busting team. Reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
The subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled dedicated police units.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act. And claimed and shamed. Man versus the food line, as a trip leads to a huge personal injury claim.
there is a more sinister underlying background to this.
A specialist fraud-busting force are on the hunt for two men suspected of defrauding a charity.
This particular case is quite unpleasant.
And a 13-ton fire truck is blamed for wrecking a car.
Personally, I think it's a disgrace. It's sickening.
Supermarket shopping, you know what it's like. So many choices, mayonnaise, no, bread. Where are the peaches? Half-price toothpaste. But watch your step. Before you know it, you've tripped over the debris left on a floor by a careless shelf stacker. This is a supermarket in Northern Ireland. The man on the floor, Daniel Braniff, looks to be in a lot of pain. That's because he's just taken a hard fall in this food aisle. The culprit, some of this.
The allegation was that he fell over some plastic banding in the shop.
What had started out as a trip to the supermarket was now going to end up as a visit to A&E.
He went to the hospital and sought treatment for this soft tissue injury to his left side.
With an injury that could potentially hinder him for months, the crocked Daniel Braniff decided to make a claim against the supermarket.
Mr. Braniff brought the claim to our attention the day after the alleged incident. Slipping in a supermarket is not uncommon, and it's why supermarkets pay a lot of attention to ensuring that their aisles are clean and clear.
It seemed the supermarket Braniff had been shopping in hadn't been so diligent with its tidiness. It was looking like a potentially costly mistake. Daniel Braniff submitted a £12,000 injury claim against him. And he had a piece of physical evidence to support his claim, in the form of the plastic strap, which he'd scooped up after the accident. Solid evidence or not, the claim would have to be thoroughly checked. The expert handlers of the insurance company dealing with the case set about their work. Very soon, alarm bells were ringing. The insurance company felt that this claim needed a closer look. They requested to see the CCTV footage from the supermarket at the time of the incident.
In the footage, you'll see Mr. Braniff talking on his mobile phone and walking around the store.
All fairly innocuous. But when Daniel Braniff finishes his phone call, his actions take a bizarre twist.
When we first saw the video containing Mr. Braniff's accident, frankly, we couldn't believe that he had the effrontery to make a claim for this.
That's because the footage does not reveal Daniel Braniff innocently walking into the plastic hazard in front of him, as his claim would have you believe. Instead, it shows this. Braniff, fully aware of the plastic strapping on the floor, executing an extremely unconvincing trick.
There's no sophistication to this attempted fraud at all. It is really quite comical.
The whole farce begins 40 seconds before the trip. The CCTV footage shows Braniff exiting the aisle, at which point he treads on the packaging. Instantly, he puts his devious plan into action.
It's quite clear that in the video he carefully tries to maneuver a piece of plastic banding around his foot, and when he's quite comfortable that nobody is looking, he then falls over. We immediately decided not to pay this claim and took Mr. Braniff to the police service of Northern Ireland, where we alleged that he had attempted to defraud us and ultimately the supermarket.
Appearing in court, Daniel Braniff pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 4 months in custody, suspended for 3 years and fined £250.
When we saw the footage, it was one of those that drew people around to look at it. But there is a more sinister underlying background to this, because ultimately this person is making a substantial claim for damages against the supermarket and ultimately the insurer. And it is clear out-and-out fraud.
Any wannabe fraudsters should tread very carefully. In the next few months, a register of convicted fraudsters is being rolled out. Accessible to every major insurance company in Britain, anyone on the list might find it a lot harder to get cheap insurance.
People should think again before they get tempted to do this because the consequences are they will get prosecuted and their name will be put on the insurance fraud register, which will impact them in the future.
Insurance fraud is on the rise, and if you have insurance of any kind, you're footing the bill. But the fraudsters better watch their backs.
IFED is a 35-strong unit that works tirelessly to hunt down and prosecute insurance fraudsters wherever they may be throughout England and Wales.
Through a combination of investigation, industry connections and the element of surprise, they've made over 300 arrests and stopped millions of pounds from going to the criminals, money which ultimately goes back in our pockets.
It's highly likely now, if you commit any insurance fraud, you will get caught.
It's 6 a.m. and 2 IFED teams are on the road. The two teams are 90 miles apart, but both heading to raid locations linked to a single bank account. Head of IFED DCI David Wood is attending the operation.
We're on our way to our suspect's address. There's another car with 2 officers that are going to meet us nearby. This particular case is quite unpleasant because the victims are actually a children's charity.
The charity has had its bank account details stolen. Whoever stole them is now using the account to purchase motor vehicle insurance. Despite living in different cities, the 2 men being targeted by IFED today are both suspected of using the same charity bank account details.
It's particularly unpleasant, this one. However, we must remain professional.
DCI Wood's team arrive at the raid location at 6:15.
We're never exactly sure who's going to be there when we get there, but obviously we do our checks, and this guy should be there with his family, but we don't know, so we've got to be on our toes. That was Mum or... That's the IFED knock on the door.
Okay, I'm looking at
The man who has opened the door is not the suspect.
Okay, and I believe that he resides here.
Yes, yeah.
Is he around at the moment?
DCI Wood's suspicions are confirmed. The suspect does live at the property, but despite it being 6:20 a.m, he's not in.
We've made contact with him via telephone, and it's hoped that we're going to meet him very shortly. He won't give us his current location. However, we're keen to speak to him, and we're hoping that he's going to be with us. It's now at 6:25. By 8 o'clock, we'll be speaking to him, fingers crossed. But unfortunately now we're in his hands a little bit because we don't know exactly where he is.
"90 miles away, the other IFED team is closing in on its raid address.
We're all travelling now in convoy to the address where we hope to find our suspects. We're just going to be knocking on the address here, where we expect the suspect to be.
The suspect in this address is also under investigation for purchasing insurance using the same stolen details of the same charity bank account.
Just to make sure nobody else is here. The team is just checking upstairs now to see if anybody else is upstairs and see if our suspect's here.
Come through here, Goodin. Right, as I said, I'm from the City of London Police, from the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, okay, in the Economic Crime in the City of London Police. What we're here for today is an inquiry in relation to an insurance policy that was taken out with fraudulent bank details. Okay. Right, and we don't believe that the person who took that policy out, the car was registered to you, it was your vehicle, taken out over the internet. We don't believe that that person had permission to use the bank details to take out that policy, okay? I believe that you're responsible for that, and as such, I'm arresting you for fraud by false representation. You do not have to say anything that may harm your defence. You do not mention or question something which you like to rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
knife head is closing in on its target. The man on the left is very angry, and with good reason. He's just had a very frightening experience. He was in the passenger seat of the black car when a fire engine smashed into it.
He claimed that we hit his vehicle with sufficient force to actually lift it up off the ground, push it towards the pumps on the station forecourt, and as a result of that heavy collision caused him whiplash injuries.
A fire engine is not the kind of vehicle you want to tangle with. The average fire engine is 7 metres long, 2.5 metres wide, and weighs in at a hefty 13 tonnes. It's easy to understand how a behemoth like this could wreck a car and damage your neck in one swipe.
Immediately after the crash, 2 men came over to our vehicle. Our driver and the officer in charge of the vehicle got out, had a word with them, had a look at the damage to their vehicle and the minor damage to our vehicle, exchanged all our insurance details, and then we basically got back on the fire engine and left the scene.
The claimant's whiplash wasn't going away, and there were further complications to come.
He claimed injury to his neck, his shoulders, which was quite severe for the first 2 months. They lasted 7 months in total. He also claimed he'd suffered psychiatric injury and had flashbacks for 3 to 4 weeks, and he was anxious driving his vehicle for a total period of 4 months.
The severely inconvenienced crash victim decided to make a claim against the Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service.
That claim was valued about £10,000, taking into account his damages, his own solicitor's costs and the cost to the Greater Manchester Fire Service.
It was an annoying situation for the fire service. Because it self-insures, the £10,000 was going to have to come out of its own pockets.
This isn't something whereby the insurers are being affected by it. It's actually the public organisation that's being affected by it. And any kind of money that goes out of the organisation without good cause will have an impact ultimately on frontline services.
Before the £10,000 could be paid out, as standard, the Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service needed to check their own incident report against the claim.
There were some inconsistencies with the claim which caused us to look at it in detail. The fire engine suffered minor cosmetic damage to the handle of the locker and the front indicator. The firefighters hardly noticed the incident at all. They only became aware of it when they heard the car horn.
Suddenly, the brakes were put on the claim. The fire crew's version of events were in stark contrast to the claimant's description of being in a car that was thrown in the air. The fire brigade, wanting to know more, decided to roll out some technology.
The cameras that we have on board, there is one pointing in every direction. There's one in the front cab, there's one on either side, and then there's one at roof level on the rear of the vehicle.
Luckily, one of the cameras had a clear view of the garage forecourt. Everyone was about to find out what happened on the day of the collision.
Garage forecourt was quite busy on that night, and at the same time there's a car wash that wasn't that far away from where the actual vehicle was parked, our vehicle and their vehicle was parked. So then when our fire engine came to drive away from the pumps, it was a really tight turn.
And here is the video footage. Just as the claimant reported, the fire engine rams into the front of the parked car, sending it and its occupants flying towards one of the petrol pumps. Hang on, did I just miss that? Nope, the car doesn't move at all.
The CCTV footage showed the fire engine moving off very slowly, turning across the front of the claimant's vehicle, and it shows the touching of the vehicles. You can see from the CCTV footage that the vehicle moves hardly, if at all. The collision wasn't dangerous in any way. From the CCTV footage, this was a really low-speed, minor collision, and the estimate is that we were doing less than 5 miles an hour.
Flying cars, whiplash and psychological damage, all a lie. The whole claim from the car passenger was an opportunistic attempt at fraud.
The outcome of this case was, once we disclosed the CCTV footage, the claimant realised the game was over. He quickly discontinued the claim before he got into more serious trouble. Unfortunately, he had to repay nearly £6,000 of legal costs to the defendant. He put himself at risk of a criminal prosecution, and it was reported in the local newspaper, the Manchester Evening News. Well, personally, I think it's a disgrace. It's sickening. These people put their lives on the risk every hour of the day, protecting us, our families, our children, our property, and this is how they're repaid by some sectors of society. It's disgraceful, unbelievable.
I'd say to anybody who's thinking about making any kind of claim like this, is don't do it. We will investigate every claim that is made, and certainly every one of our vehicles has CCTV cameras which point in every direction. So we will find out that it's a fraudulent claim.
On Britain's busy roads, there are thousands of collisions every day. If you're involved in one, you might want some professional help processing your claim. Who do you turn to?
If you've had a non-fault claim, you might go to a claims management company after the accident for them to help you pursue your claim against an insurance company.
A claims management company will help you with the complex process of paperwork, medical examinations, vehicle repair, and temporary vehicle hire. They sound like the white knights of the road, there when you really need them. That might be true of most of them, but it turns out a growing number of claims management companies are committing insurance fraud. Fraudulent claims management companies use a variety of different techniques to commit fraud, and one of their methods is very dangerous: the induced accident.
So this is where a gang of criminals will take a vehicle out onto a public road, they'll pay somebody to drive that car and induce accidents. So they're effectively paying drivers to cause accidents on public roads.
After tricking an innocent person into crashing into one of their paid drivers, the fraudulent claims management company will then deal with the claim that results from the induced collision. It's a big earner for the fraudsters.
Crash for cash scams cost the industry nearly £400 million a year. That equates to a lot of money to all of us on our premiums.
One claims management company, Cami Claims, operating out of North London, was a big fan of the induced accident. And if you were a responsible car owner with insurance, you were a potential crash target for the crooked Cami Claims.
In order for the frauds that Cami Claims were committing to succeed, they required innocent members of the public to be the victims to their scam. So they were looking for people that were insured, people that were on the school run, people that were innocent members of the public that paid their premium so they could then make a fraudulent claim on their policies.
They had been getting away with it for years, generating millions of pounds worth of fraudulent claims in the process. Things were looking good for the North London business, but it wasn't going to last. 10 miles across town in West London, a powerful enemy had clocked the fraudulent claims management company and was closing in. In the summer of 2012, D.I. Hindmarsh and his unit were in the final stages of an investigation into Cami Claims.
We received information that a particular claims management company operating out of North London were involved in setting up induced collisions and then dealing with the claims and obviously reaping the rewards of the financial benefit.
Strengthening their position, the Met Traffic Unit has many allies in the world of insurance. One of them is the Insurance Fraud Bureau. It has access to information about nearly every insurance policy in the country. That amount of information gives you a serious advantage when tackling fraudsters.
A key part of the role of the IFB is to find the trends and patterns that are invisible to other parts of the industry.
And very quickly, a pattern emerged.
And when we started to look at the claims that were connected to Cami Claims, there were a suspicious number of similarities between all the accidents. And if you had a genuine claims management company, you'd expect them to deal with a variety of different types of claims.
The Met Traffic Unit and the IFB were closing in. And it seemed that Cami Claims' penchant for causing crashes could be their downfall.
Cami Claims were using very similar methods for all the claims that they were pursuing. They were induced accidents, and they were all in the London area, and the accidents that were taking place were commonly on roundabouts or slip roads.
The evidence was stacked against the still active fraudulent claims management company. D.I. Hindmarsh was ready to pounce. In the summer of 2012, we filmed the Met Traffic Unit as they brought down the fraudulent Cammy claims.
They were an organised criminal gang that needed to be stopped. Once we were happy, we'd looked at all of the evidence that we had. We took the steps to obtain a number of search warrants.
I'm outside the accident management company now.
On the day of the raids, we did 3 search warrants. One on the claims management company, which resulted in some cash and some fraudulent documents being recovered.
This was one of the biggest fraudulent claims management companies ever investigated. The evidence trail continued.
We then went to the address of one of the claims management company owners.
Mr. Please, can you open up, please?
Needing more evidence, the Met Traffic Unit was very keen to gain entry to the flat.
We seized a number of documents from that address. There was a great deal of paperwork seized. I think it related to somewhere in the regions of 250 claims that they were currently dealing with on behalf of customers.
D.I. Hindmarsh and his unit hadn't just come for paperwork. They were also going to take the tools of the trade from the fraudsters.
We also seized around about 10 cars. We were able to show that these particular vehicles had been involved in the crime. Effectively, they're exhibits, as you would seize a forged document. That was the reason that we took the cars.
The raid had been a complete success.
The matter was listed at Southwark Crown Court on the 1st of February 2013. The 2 people who we charged was Ion Vaduva and Andrei Majelik. They had both been charged with conspiracy to defraud the insurance industry, and they both pleaded guilty.
Another crash for cash gang had been brought down by the Met Traffic Unit and the IFB, making our roads a little bit safer to drive on.
It's important that claims management companies like Cammy Claims are shut down. It's not a victimless crime. Firstly, in order to make a lot of these claims, innocent members of the public's safety is being put at risk. Secondly, insurance companies are not the only people that pay for this fraud. Ultimately, as consumers, we all pay for the cost in our premiums.
Today, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED, is tracking down 2 suspects 90 miles apart. Both suspects are alleged to have used stolen bank account details in order to purchase vehicle insurance.
This particular case is quite unpleasant because the victims are actually a children's charity.
The team, led by DCI David Wood, is lying in wait for its suspect, who wasn't at his home address this morning. 90 miles away, the other IFED team has arrested its suspect.
What we're going to do is we're going to search this premises. We have authority to do that under Section 32 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act when you've been arrested, okay? For anything in relation to that offence or any other offence of a similar nature, okay? Do you have anything within this premises that you want to show us in relation to the policy that I talked about? No, okay. All right. If you bear with us then, we'll conduct the search and then we'll go from here to a local police station, okay? I'll just ask you to sit tight and assist us with that, okay?
The search for potential evidence of fraud begins. Specifically, IFED is looking for items relating to the insurance purchased with the charity's stolen bank account details. IFED decides to focus the search on the suspect's bedroom.
1 or 2 items in here that I'll be looking to see is a computer, because he's taken out the policy using his computer.
A cluttered surface in the suspect's room draws the attention of DI Angela Rogers.
Okay, that's just a mobile phone that was on the top of the chest of drawers.
DI Rogers methodically sifts through the stacks of paperwork and makes a potentially rewarding find in the form of a bank statement.
This one's just in another name that I don't recognise, so just double check this one. Be concerned as to why they've got a bank account opened in somebody else's name. The address is for this address. I'd be concerned that maybe it's been opened in a false name.
Amongst the clutter, DI Rogers unearths another vehicle registration document linked to the stolen bank account detail.
This is a V5 document for the vehicle he'd insured using the charity trust account.
The suspect is taken away for further questioning at a local police station. The search is over.
It's been a very successful search as far as we're concerned.
It's been a good result for this IFED team, but it's only one half of a two-location raid. 90 miles away, DCI David Wood's patience has paid off.
Come on, man.
Let's have a chat in the car.
After a 3-hour stakeout, his suspect has finally turned up.
You'll realise we're decent people.
Anything you do say may be given in evidence, and the offence that you're being arrested for is fraud by false representation. Okay, so what's going to happen now is that I'm going to make a quick phone call to the control room. They're going to allocate a police station for us, and then we'll go there, get you interviewed and get you back out.
It took a little bit longer than planned, but DCI Wood is a happy man.
The investigation is now fully underway. Suspects are in custody, so it's been a successful morning, albeit it didn't go exactly to plan, but sometimes these things don't. But both suspects are now in police detention, which is the objective of the exercise.
A great outcome for both of IFED's teams in their ongoing fight against the crime of insurance fraud. Insurance fraud in the UK is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
There's a subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled, dedicated police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con-men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Today, the Met Traffic Unit collars some suspected fraudsters on an early morning raid.
Do you work here, though?
I don't work here.
You seem quite at home. You're caught up and things.
A lost dog at the centre of a pet insurance claim makes a remarkable comeback.
Another local vet has just contacted me for the veterinary history of that dog that supposedly was washed off the cliff because it's just been registered with them.
And a crash for cash gang is caught out trying to tangle with a truck.
Experience tells you when you're viewing footage that some things are not quite right.
This busy station is in Middlesbrough, in the northeast of England. Thousands of passengers pass through its bustling foyer every day. In the summer of 2011, it was the scene of a dangerous accident that led to a large insurance claim. Here's the man in question, moments before he fell and suffered serious injury. Lee Ingram from First Group's Transportation Claims Division worked on the case.
He's alleging that as he is walking across the foyer, he has tripped in a gap, which he is describing as a defect on the floor, fallen over and injured himself. The gentleman is alleging that from this particular trip, he has sustained injuries to his head, causing an open head wound, Subsequently, he's then alleging that he has sustained dizzy spells and succumbed to headaches. This is some 2 months after the incident. He's still got headaches and suffering from dizziness.
His ongoing health problems indicated that this had been no minor accident.
He's describing a traumatic head injury. Head injuries are always something we would be concerned about. Often concussion is not immediately apparent to the person who sustained the concussion. Head injuries can also lead to cognitive issues which will impair function, possible speech issues, and maybe loss of short-term or long-term memory. So they're always something we will investigate seriously.
It was a potentially life-changing injury, but when Transportation Claims went to call up the accident report, they found that there wasn't one.
The gentleman concerned alleges that he did not report this particular incident to anyone because the station ticket office was closed and there was no one around for him to report to at the time.
It was clear that the case needed further investigation. Luckily, the station is covered by CCTV, and the cameras had captured everything from that evening. Immediately before the accident, the man is seen to cross the foyer. He then falls over in a dramatic manner.
When you see what has transpired in this particular footage, it makes you suddenly start thinking, well, this is a bit strange.
What they saw on camera made Lee and his team suspicious.
And you would expect in this type of fall for someone to fall forward quite quickly. The first reaction when you take a fall like that is to put your arms out to break your fall. We don't see that in this situation.
Instead, the footage raises serious questions.
We see the chap immediately going to hold his head before he hits the fall, suggesting that he may well be trying to break his fall because he knew it was coming.
What's more, the footage shows numerous other passengers encountering no difficulty with the alleged defect in the floor tiling.
We see around about 15 people walking over, around and across, some people even standing in the actual area where this person is alleging he's tripped. Just the sheer number that walk over it would suggest it wasn't the issue that the claimant is making it out to be.
And the discrepancies didn't stop there. The claimant alleged that he didn't report the incident because there were no station staff around, but this was disproved.
When you look at the footage, you will see a number of people wearing high-vis jackets, which would have been station employees that he could have reported this particular fall to.
But that's not all that's revealed by the footage. Perhaps the most telling piece of evidence was right at the beginning of the tape. A little girl is seen scooting around the foyer.
And at one stage, she runs over the tile, dislodging one of the tiles. She stops a little bit further on, turns round, and goes and replaces the tile where it's come from, obviously showing that there is a loose tile in the foyer.
Significantly, this all happens within view of the claimant.
Preceding the fall, you will see the gentleman walk towards the defect, take a deliberate look at it, walk on past it, lengthening his stride so he can actually step over the area in question. He then walks towards the foyer, he turns round at the stairs, walks back towards the area, and you can visibly see him deviate to the left so that he can place his right foot deliberately into the area concerned. He does stumble forward as if his legs have been taken away from him. I think he's given a great performance. He possibly could have won awards for that.
Transportation Claims felt they had all the evidence they needed to strike out the claimant's demand for compensation. They sent the CCTV to the claimant's solicitors and waited for a response.
2 years on, we've still not had a response from them as to whether they're withdrawing their claim, so we'll take it as read that they actually are. For him to think he can get away with this sort of thing is quite naive and bordering on ridiculous.
A dodgy vet is caught cashing in on treatments for pets that never existed.
The only element of truth was the fact that the vet who was submitting the invoices for this expensive treatment was a real vet.
A Met Traffic Unit raid on an accident management company turns up a truckload of potential evidence.
There are multiple registration documents, hundreds and hundreds of insurance claim forms, the usual mobile phones that are used in the claims. Basically, it's a gold mine.
This is the home of the Met Traffic Unit. Set up in 2010, this specialist department is dedicated to reducing the number of traffic-related deaths, injuries and crimes on the streets of the capital.
We search for people who are wanted for serious offences. My team have made 300 arrests in the last 2.5 years, which is around about 50 operations. Every one of those operations will have resulted in a prosecution.
Their aim is to make our roads as safe as possible. Criminal gangs operating insurance scams are responsible for the rise of a terrifying new danger on our roads: crash for cash. DI Dave Hindmarsh of the Met Traffic Unit is once again spearheading the initiative to stop the gangs in their tracks.
You have the most serious types of cash for crash, which is the induced collision. And this is primarily where criminal gang members go out onto the roads with two cars. They'll drive in tandem looking for their victim. They'll position themselves in front, and then the decoy car, which will be the lead car, will brake hard. That gives the middle car, the one that they want to be damaged, a reason to brake, catch their victim out, and they'll run into the back. And that is a typical cash for crash scenario. The insurance industry have estimated that it costs them somewhere in the range of £392 million per year, but I think it's probably bigger than that. It is an extremely dangerous way of earning some money because you are putting innocent members of the public at risk. Cash for crash gangs will target commercial vehicles for the simple reason is they're insured. They know they're going to be insured, and that's what they want. They don't want to cause a crash with someone who might not be insured.
Because fraudsters go after commercial fleet vehicles, some insurance companies like Towergate have taken the innovative step of supplying fleet vehicles with forward-facing cameras.
That is one of the cameras that we use. As you can see, it's quite small, and we sight them behind the rearview mirror.
But it's not the size that's important.
Towergate introduced them as a method of determining legal liability following an accident. We see what the driver sees.
The cameras certainly prove their worth in the case of a collision on a busy A road in July 2010. One of their vehicles had hit the car in front. It sounded like a standard rear-end shunt, but the footage revealed something more sinister. They passed it to DI Hindmarsh.
In the footage, what you see is a blue Mercedes and a black VW Golf. The black VW Golf is the decoy car, the car that's there to give the blue Mercedes a reason to brake. And effectively, the footage shows the two vehicles manoeuvring themselves in front of the lorry, and at the last moment, the black Golf brakes hard, turns left into a side road, causing the blue Mercedes to brake and stop, and the lorry crashes into the back with some significant rear damage.
Experience tells you when you're viewing footage that some things are not quite right.
It's quite a large impact. Now, the people involved in this are almost stunt drivers because I've watched that bit of footage several times, and at the last moment, just before impact, the driver of the Mercedes comes off the brakes and turns the steering wheel to the left. So therefore, he is hit, but he's almost pushed out of the way and round the corner rather than being pushed into incoming traffic.
The shocking footage had actually captured a crash for cash gang in action, and the investigation eventually uncovered a huge web of criminality stretching across the country.
The decoy car, the black Golf that you see in the footage, the driver came from Luton. The Mercedes that you see getting damaged, the owner of that car lives in London. One of the passengers in the car lived in Manchester, and the claims management company that were going to handle some of the aspect of this claim were in South Yorkshire.
The Met Traffic Unit investigated the main players seen in the footage.
We knew who the owner of the Mercedes was, and it was a matter of finding out who his associates were. Ansab Rizwan was the managing director of an accident management company in Yorkshire. His brother, Isham Gondal, was a passenger in the Mercedes, and Tariq Mahmood, we identified, was the driver of the decoy car.
Dave Hindmarsh and his team had enough evidence to launch a full-scale investigation.
It resulted in the accident management company in Yorkshire being subject of a search warrant, and we searched the premises and took all the files. That highlighted a number of other collisions in London, Manchester, and around the sort of the Luton, Bedfordshire area.
The suspects were arrested, and the case eventually came to court.
They all pleaded guilty. Tariq Mahmood was seen as the most serious of the people concerned. You know, he was the one that had caused the crashes at the end of the day. He got 12 months imprisonment. Ansab Rizwan and his brother Ilisham Gondel, they received suspended sentences and 180 hours unpaid work. And Nasser Khan, who was the gentleman who had allowed his car to be used, he received a community order as a result. So people who previously hadn't been in trouble with the police before have now got criminal records, and some have gone to prison.
The sentences reflected the seriousness of the crime.
Crash for cash at the end of the day risks injuring innocent people in a staged road accident.
It's a very real danger. In February 2013, a gang was jailed for their role in the tragic death of a young woman caught up in a crash for cash accident.
If a lot more commercial vehicles and even private cars were fitted with cameras, it would be a massive use to ourselves and the insurance companies.
We think of the UK as a nation of animal lovers, but unscrupulous fraudsters are exploiting our furry friends in order to line their pockets. Disturbing figures from the Association of British Insurers show pet insurance fraud quadrupled from £420,000 in 2009 to almost £2 million in 2010. Simon Wheeler is Managing Director of Agria Pet Insurance. He reviewed a claim for a payout for a missing dog.
It was a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. It was nearly 4 years old.
The claimant contacted the company to explain what had happened to the poor pooch.
The policyholder and the dog had been in Cornwall, near the seaside, and the dog had been washed out to sea off a rock, and that was the last the policyholder saw of the dog. This is quite obviously traumatic for the owner because in the claim form she was very upset and the dog had been washed out to sea in front of her eyes and she hadn't got it back.
Despite the heartbreak of losing the dog, the policyholder would receive a silver lining in the form of a payout and promptly sent through the documentation in support of the claim.
The claim form was completed by the policyholder and the full veterinary section was completed as well by her local vet.
As part of the claims procedure, Agria contacted the veterinary practice associated with the dog to check the animal had been registered with them and that the vet who signed the form worked there.
The veterinary practice instantly said, yes, this is one of our patients, and that this vet works at the practice. That vet at the time who had signed the claim form was on holiday when we contacted them, though. Nothing really led us to suggest that there was fraudulent activity on this claim, and indeed we settled the claim. Fairly low value for £300.
But then Agria were contacted by the vet who had just returned from her holiday.
She was pretty confident that she hadn't filled out the claim form, she hadn't signed the claim form because, as far as she was concerned, if she couldn't identify the pet and that the pet had died, she wouldn't have signed a veterinary certificate to say that it had died.
The claim form was faxed through to the vet who confirmed that it wasn't her signature and pointed out another discrepancy.
The practice stamp that had been included on the claim form actually wasn't their practice stamp. So more than likely the policyholder had a stamp made up to add that level of authenticity to the claim.
It seemed clear that Agria was dealing with a fraudulent claim. Although they'd gone to some lengths to create a genuine-looking form, they had totally underestimated the insurer's determination to stamp out fraud.
We went back to the policyholder and said, we believe you're acting fraudulently, we've been in contact with the veterinary practice, and they didn't complete this claim form at all. Very shortly afterwards, we got a cheque in the post from the policyholder for the £300, a letter of explanation to say that somebody in the policyholder's household had completed the claim form and submitted it fraudulently.
But the whole shaggy dog story didn't end there. 4 months later, Agria were contacted again by the dog's vet, who had uncovered a staggering new development.
She rang up and said, you're not going to believe this. Another local vet has just contacted me for the veterinary history of that dog that supposedly was washed off the cliff because it's just been registered with them.
It appeared that the dog had never been washed off a rock and drowned. It was alive and well and had just registered with a new vet. It's one thing for owners to attempt to pull the wool over insurers' eyes, but what really gives pause for thought is the behaviour of dishonest vets. Detective Constable Alex Cooley from IFED, the City of London's Police Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, worked on one such case. His team was alerted to a pet insurance claim for veterinary work that appeared suspicious.
We first received a referral from one of the insurance companies who had spotted the discrepancy between the work being claimed for by the vet and the fact that that type of work wasn't carried out by that particular practice.
It didn't add up, and IFED carried out further inquiries.
And we identified another insurance company who had 4 suspicious claims coming from the same vet.
The man in question was Francisco Cruz, a vet working at a practice in Norfolk.
We were looking at 5 claims in total involving both cats and dogs who were alleged to have chewed pieces of plastic, leading to medical difficulties and requiring expensive surgery. So on average, the claims were coming out at about £2,500.
The fact that all 5 claims were for a type of surgery that didn't take place at Cruz's workplace seemed suspicious, but more evidence was needed. When they looked into the identities of the policyholders, it seemed that they had the proof that they were after.
The names that he was using were a sort of hodgepodge of members of his close family, but also his friends and even children of his friends. Couldn't detect any particular reason behind that other than sort of imaginative laziness.
It turned out that every detail about the claims was false, even the pets themselves.
The only element of truth was the fact that the vet was a real vet. So the vet was forging his own invoices in respect of work which was never carried out. And then he was making claims against the policies that he had totally made up concerning these fake pets.
Cruz was abusing his position as a vet to pass off fake claims, but he hadn't covered his tracks, and the IFED team had enough evidence to arrest him. Cruz's motivation was clearly financial.
And in order to pay off certain debts, he was making a fake claim at about a rate of 1 every year. In total, he made £10,000 from his offending.
The case eventually reached court, and Cruz was found guilty. He was sentenced to a suspended 8-month jail term, 200 hours community service, and ordered to pay £10,000 compensation. But perhaps the greatest cost is to Cruz's professional reputation. Gordon Hockey is head of legal services at the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, the body that regulates every vet in the UK.
All vets on becoming members make a declaration, in effect, to put the animals and the public first. And where veterinary surgeons are dishonest, commit insurance fraud, that's clearly not putting animals first and not putting the public first. And so it is taken seriously by the college. The vast majority of vets are law-abiding and are honest. So this happens very rarely. The most severe sanction that the RCVS can impose on a veterinary surgeon is to take their name off the register, to strike them off the register, which means that they can't practice and they therefore can't earn a living as a veterinary surgeon.
Today, the Metropolitan Police Traffic Unit has assembled for a briefing about a raid they're about to carry out on an accident management company.
Basically, Operation is around the accident management company. The Insurance Fraud Bureau have identified several claims which can be described as suspicious circumstances. We need to do a bit of investigation into the legitimacy of the claims that seem to be handled.
They've been given a tip-off by the Insurance Fraud Bureau.
Basically, today the intention will be to execute a search warrant at the address.
Accident management companies process claims on behalf of victims of road traffic accidents. They organise hire vehicles, refer cases to lawyers, and manage personal injury claims. Unfortunately, there are many examples of accident management companies acting fraudulently by inventing or inflating claims. The Met Traffic Unit is planning to execute a search warrant on the premises of an accident management company in the hope of collecting evidence to support their case of suspected fraud. Once they've arrived at the location, they identify the premises and then move in as quickly as possible to make sure no one escapes or tries to hide vital evidence.
Hello mate, you got any ID on you? Yes. Okay.
The first thing they do is ask everyone for ID. The officers need to work out who's a client and who's an employee. But some of the people in the office appear to be holding back.
I know how old I am. Why don't you know how old you are?
I'm not 32 then.
You're sure you're 32?
Yeah, 32.
Yeah, you're not going to change it? No? Okay.
Others seem to be confused about their role at the company.
What's your position here?
Yeah, it's my brother's company.
It's your brother's company?
Yeah.
But do you work here, though?
I don't work
You
here.
seem quite at home with your coat off and stuff like that. You seem quite at home with your coat off and things.
I'm looking after him.
After who?
I'm looking after my brother's work.
Oh, you're looking after... So you do work here?
Yeah, sometime I come here.
That's what I said. I said, do you work here?
No,
You said no.
I don't work.
Yeah.
I sometimes come here, see the thing.
The traffic unit needs to speak to the owner, but he isn't in the office and has left his brother in charge.
It's just that I class this as what you've said as working here.
Sorry?
I class what you've said as you working here.
No, I'm
You're
not
not just a person that's just coming off the street, are you?
No.
That's the point I'm trying to
No
say, yeah?
problem.
Yeah, we'll let you keep things simple, all right? It just takes longer if we don't.
No problem.
Do you understand that, yeah?
Eventually, everyone has been checked and identified, and most are allowed to leave. The job of collecting evidence can now get underway. As the team go through the premises, the sheer size of the task becomes apparent. The office is stuffed full of cupboards and filing cabinets.
It's one of the offices at the moment. Eventually we'll be taking all the files out and we'll look at it at a later stage. When we've got a bit more time to spread it all out, we can't do it at the scene. It's just totally impractical.
Yeah, basically we're just systematically going through, bagging up all the property, so we don't miss anything, and obviously for continuity as well. It does take a bit of time, but it's something which has got to be done properly.
Yes.
7 mobile phones.
The mobile phones could be an important piece of evidence for a number of reasons.
You can get lots of details off them. You can link them into different collisions, different false claims, and you can also get an idea of who's working here and whose phone it ultimately belongs to. Obviously, once they've been examined, then we'll find out exactly what their involvement is. It may well be quite innocent, but you don't normally find bags of mobile phones lying around.
The owner of the company belatedly arrives at the scene.
The guy sitting behind me with a baseball cap is in fact the owner of the premises. He's heard what's been going on because obviously his brother was here when we first entered the premises, and he's obviously come along to see what's going on, see us taking away his business.
It's important to follow up all the suspected evidence, and that includes keys to cars being stored or used for hire.
Everything centres around the fact that some of the claims for car hires, car hiring, storage and that are believed to be fraudulent, so any of the vehicles are probably part of that as well. They're part of the overall potentially criminal enterprise that we're looking at. 30 keys here, but there could be more.
So far, DC Tony Recchia is pleased with how well the raid is going.
Well, we basically found things that we were looking for. There are multiple registration documents, hundreds and hundreds of insurance claim forms, the usual mobile phones that are used in the claims. Basically, it's a gold mine.
DI Dave Hindmarsh has arrived at the location to oversee proceedings.
The team have come down to execute a search warrant, and as a result there's been a large amount of property seized from the premises. The intention is a lorry will arrive and we will load all of the seized property onto the lorry, and in our leisure we will sift through it to see which bits are evidence and which bits are not.
The team isn't taking any chances and has seized a huge volume of potential evidence, leaving the office practically bare.
It's been several months in the planning to get to the stage that we are now, meticulously looking through records and investigating in the background before we came out today.
The challenge is now to take it away safely.
4 crates, that's exactly what we're dealing with here, loads of property.
Once the crates are full, the team moves on to the next stage in the process.
They're just heat shrinking the packages to ensure the continuity and integrity of the exhibit. If they're heat shrinked at the scene, It's all documented. Nobody will say that it's been tampered with or anything's been added or taken away. It's all been documented what's gone in. So it's a good way of keeping stuff together. It will stay that way until they get opened and re-examined at a later stage.
It's a really satisfying moment, this, watching all the bags being sealed up. We've got 2 large crates that have been sealed up now, and 3 filing cabinets all full of files.
The sheer volume of work that's needed to trawl through the suspected evidence is proof of the Met Traffic Unit's commitment to stamping out fraud. They'll stop at nothing to make our roads safe. Is reaching epidemic levels, and it's costing us billions of pounds every year. Deliberate crashes, bogus personal injury claims, even phantom pets. The fraudsters are risking more and more to make a quick killing. And every year, it's adding up to £50 to your insurance bill. Insurers are fighting back, armed with covert surveillance systems.
The subject out the vehicle.
Sophisticated data analysis techniques. And highly skilled dedicated police units. They're catching the criminals red-handed. All those con men, scammers and cheats on the fiddle, now they're caught in the act and claimed and shamed. Police squad dedicated to stamping out insurance fraud executes an early morning raid.
Our job would be made easier if you tell us where your paperwork is. All right, no problem. We'll search the whole place. No.
A man who claims he's too disabled to work is caught lugging kitchen units at a warehouse.
It was quite galling. If it wasn't so serious, it would be humorous.
And a fraudulent claim for an old banger goes nowhere after the owner is caught providing fake photos.
One of the photographs that he'd supplied was a direct lift from the website of a Bentley dealership.
Building sites are known for strict health and safety regulations, but accidents do happen. In 2005, a fall from a vehicle like this resulted in a personal injury case so fiercely contested that it led to a change in the law. David Spencer from law firm Berryman's Lace Moore worked on the case. He started by looking into the man at the centre of the claim, Sean Summers.
He says that he slipped from a stacker truck, which is a kind of JCB type vehicle. The injuries that Sean sustained were a fracture to his wrist, which was relatively minor and relatively straightforward. The fracture to his ankle was quite serious. It required pins being put in and a second operation for a bone graft.
No one had witnessed the accident, and a judge ruled that Summers' employers, Fairclough Homes, were liable. The insurers would have to compensate him for any loss suffered as a result of the accident. And if Sean Summers' claims about the extent of his injuries were true, the losses would be considerable.
According to him, he couldn't walk without the aid of elbow crutches. He wasn't able to walk up and down stairs. He wasn't able to stand for long periods of time.
Just as serious was his assertion that he would never work again.
So his claim for loss of earnings for a man who was in his middle 20s was significant, into the many hundreds of thousands of pounds. And because he said that he was unlikely to fully recover from his injuries, he also said that he would continue to require care and services for the rest of his life.
The various costs came to a grand total of £838,000. But it seemed out of all proportion to the actual injuries he'd suffered.
We've seen similar and worse injuries where people have made a quicker and better recovery. And so one of the lines of inquiry is to make sure that the claimant is being honest in his presentation.
With this in mind, they decided there was only one option: surveillance. They approached Roger Bescaby, whose company specialises in covert surveillance, to work on the case. His operatives immediately got to work. It wasn't long before secret filming revealed a very different Sean Summers to the man he was purporting to be.
Here was a guy who was showing no signs of disability. There were certainly no walking aids in place. He boarded and alighted a vehicle very easily. And I think it was actually quite useful that we had such an accurate description of the guy, because it would be quite easy to sort of not believe this is the same person, given the level of injury that this chap was alleging.
We would have expected to see a man on crutches, unable to walk, being helped perhaps through the day. The way that he displayed himself on surveillance footage, he was perfectly fit and well, and the absolute opposite of what he described in his medical evidence.
And the revelations didn't end there.
He'd told his own medical expert that he wasn't able to work and hadn't worked since the day of the accident because of the horrific pain that he was in with his ankle. The surveillance immediately showed Mr. Summers was working.
We managed to film him loading and unloading a vast amount of kitchen units, domestic appliances to and from his vehicle. This involved him climbing in and out of the van. Once again, there was no apparent disability evident in our opinion, and certainly no walking aids being used.
Sean Summers was required to attend regular medical assessments in order to evaluate the level of injury and plan for his future treatment. Surveillance footage, which was recorded on the day of one medical assessment, shows Summers waiting outside the building while his wife fills in a questionnaire. His behaviour is particularly revealing.
Mr. Summers is seen on his crutches, but at one point is sitting on a step, but pushes off from the floor with his injured foot.
Sean Summers kept up the appearance of disability for the duration of the assessment, but as soon as he returned home, things changed.
An hour and a half later, we see Mr. Summers arrive home, shoe back on the injured foot, not using the crutches at all, other than carrying him into the house.
Taken as a whole, the surveillance footage appeared to contradict the majority of Sean Summers' claim.
It was quite galling. If it wasn't so serious, it would be humorous. But we knew that this was a man who was claiming substantial damages for injuries that clearly weren't affecting him as badly as he said they were.
With the expectation that he would scale down his claim, the footage was sent to Summers' solicitors. Hearing that he'd been caught on camera seemed to have a dramatic effect.
He attended his general practitioner complaining of an acute stress reaction having been found out by the insurance company.
Eventually, the case reached court. Sean Summers adopted an unusual strategy when the surveillance footage was presented to the court.
Mr. Summers refused to accept that the surveillance evidence was anything other than showing him in a disabled state. At points it got ridiculous that despite the fact we saw him shopping in Tesco's, he said that he still couldn't go shopping.
Although there was strong evidence to suggest exaggeration, the judge was bound by legal precedents.
Even a lying and dishonest claimant was entitled to what was assessed to be the genuine part of his claim.
The judge had no option but to award Sean Summers a payout for his actual accident.
He calculated the claim to be worth in the region of £88,000.
Despite only being paid around 10% of his claim, Sean Summers still walked away with the best part of £90,000. But the defence didn't rest there, and they employed the services of renowned QC William Norris. They felt that the Sean Summers case highlighted an important legal issue.
Because the existing law was that if you claim 100% and even 90% is a fraud, as was the case here, you're still entitled to judgment for the 10%. And we wanted the law changed so the court recognised that it had a power to strike out the whole of the claim as to its entirety.
What they wanted to do was exceptional. They wanted the Supreme Court to change the law so that claimants got the message that if they were dishonest, they wouldn't get a penny.
you've been caught cheating. Your claim is dismissed in its entirety. Don't complain. If you don't like it, next time, just tell the truth.
The case was brought to the Supreme Court, and after a 2-day hearing, it came to a decision.
The Supreme Court heard legal argument and eventually handed judgment down, agreeing with the points that we made on the legal principle that where people use the court process and abuse the court process in a massive attempt to deceive, the entirety of their claim can be struck out.
It was a landmark ruling. From now on, claimants grossly exaggerating their injuries could have their whole claim thrown out of court, leaving them without a penny. The message for anyone who's tempted to inflate their claim is now loud and clear.
If they are the subject of a contempt of court case after the personal injury trial, they will be sent to prison.
So, although the ruling came after the case of Sean Summers, the payout of £88,000 he received may not have gone particularly far, as around £63,000 was deducted for state benefits. Things could have been very different if he tried an alternative approach.
If Mr. Summers had been genuine in his presentation and admitted that he'd tried to go back to work in some capacity, he would have actually never seen the inside of a courtroom. The likelihood is the insurance company would have negotiated settlement and paid him more money than the court eventually awarded.
So Sean Summers' strategy meant that he missed out on a larger amount of compensation, and his actions led to a Supreme Court ruling that has effectively changed the law.
The courts now have the tools available to them to strike out entire claims where claimants have been fraudulent or exaggerated their claim in a massive attempt to deceive.
Thanks to the ruling, people benefiting from exaggerated claims should be a thing of the past and will never again financially benefit from their greed. The police insurance fraud team finds a bundle of cash.
What's that for?
And a spectacular crash by an uninsured driver is caught on CCTV.
When we saw the footage, we thought this was a very strange accident. We don't see accidents like that very often at all.
Businessman Peter Webb ran a company that hired out vintage cars for happy couples on their wedding day. But heartbreak was in store for Webb when the latest addition to his fleet was stolen. He bought a 60-year-old Bentley Mark VI for around £3,700, spent £32,000 on renovations, and then insured it for a whopping £42,000. DC Declan Malone from the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department worked on the case. Suspicions were aroused when he looked into the circumstances of the theft.
Mr. Webb informed the police that his car had been stolen, that it was inside a locked garage, inside a locked compound. The only one that was broken into was the one that his Bentley was supposedly taken from.
In addition, the theft had occurred just 2 months after the car had been insured. And when the insurance company requested further information about the restoration, alarm bells began to ring.
They required some photographs of the stages of renovation work, which would only be natural to have been taken. He said that unfortunately for him, that wasn't possible, as all the photographs were in the boot of the car at the time that it was stolen. He was also asked to supply invoices for the renovation work that had been carried out, and he said unfortunately they were also in the boot of the car at the time that it was stolen.
The insurance company strongly suspected fraud and were querying the claim. Curiously, this appeared to jog Peter Webb's memory.
He then remembered that he'd managed to have some of the photographs captured on one of the computers that he'd given to one of his grandchildren, and he supplied those photographs to the insurance company.
But these images painted a different picture and confirmed that there was something seriously suspicious about the claim.
One of the photographs that he'd supplied was a direct lift from the website of a Bentley dealership.
He tried to pretend a photo of a pristine vintage Bentley he'd found on a website was a picture of his car. The insurance company immediately passed the case to the police. As part of the investigation, IFED went to the mechanic who'd recently performed an MOT on the car.
He said that the car that he MOT'd was in a tatty state, is how he described it. He didn't think that it was the same vehicle.
In addition, investigations revealed that the man who was said to have performed the extensive renovation work had since died and would have been far too ill to do the job. DC Declan Malone then asked renowned Bentley expert Ken Lee to look at the other photographs, and yet more inconsistencies were revealed.
We thought that the car in the photograph was a later dated car than the one that he purported to own. I think his was built in 1949 and the car in the photograph was 1952. And it's between 1950 and 1952 that the engine changed and the exhaust system changed, and that was the first giveaway. He unfortunately picked a car which was very different in its individual features from the one that he actually owned.
The car Peter Webb owned and the car in the photos were completely different. He'd pilfered pictures from the internet to pass off his shabby old banger as a pristine restoration job. He was hoping to collect £42,000 for a car worth a fraction of that price. But the most important piece of evidence was still to come. The truth behind the other photo revealed just how far he'd been prepared to go with his fraud.
Mr. Webb had taken out a Bentley from a Bentley dealership for a test drive. He'd been allowed to use the vehicle for about half an hour, during which time he fitted it with false plates and had photographs taken.
He then supplied the photo to the insurance company, claiming it was of his own car. By now, IFED had overwhelming evidence of fraud, and the case proceeded to court.
Initially, he pleaded not guilty, and it wasn't until right up until the day before the trial that he actually pleaded guilty. Mr. Webb was fined £10,000, ordered to pay £1,375 in compensation to the insurance company, £1,000 costs, plus a £15 victim surcharge. If Mr. Webb defaults on the £10,000 fine, he's been given 6 months imprisonment.
Despite going to some effort to provide fake photos, Peter Webb was unable to cheat his way to a fraudulent payout and has ended up with a criminal record and a huge fine. Combating the ever-increasing threat of insurance fraud is an elite police squad known as IFED, the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department.
The primary aim of IFED is to start taking disruptive action against those criminals who are intent on committing crime in relation to insurance. It's that defrauding that is raising the premium from everyone in this country.
They've made over 300 arrests and have saved millions of pounds in fraudulent insurance claims, money which ultimately goes back into our pockets. From now on, fraudsters need to watch their backs.
We'll do intelligence gathering, sometimes surveillance on individuals, sometimes a lot of detailed research in the background. We'll decide when the time is right to take down people, and that means often execute search warrants where necessary. We'll force entry into premises if we think evidence could be lost. In only 18 months, we've arrested over 300 people. We will start to see a reduction in the insurance fraud in this country, which is ultimately what we're aiming for. It's highly likely now, if you commit any insurance fraud, you will get caught.
Police, don't move, stay where you are!
At any one time, IFED's officers are juggling multiple ongoing investigations. Another one of DC Declan Malone's cases has reached the point where the team is ready to stage a raid. He believes that a specific traffic incident relates to a suspected motor insurance fraud. DC Malone and the team have hit the road early, so they can pay a visit to the man at the centre of the case.
Going to the home address of a taxi driver who was carrying 5 juveniles when he, we believe, induced an accident whereby he slammed on his brakes and a marked police vehicle went into the rear of him.
After the accident, claims for personal injury were then allegedly made on behalf of the juveniles who'd been in the taxi, but without their permission or the permission of their parents. The suspicion is that a third party was potentially fraudulently making the claims with the intention of lining their own pockets. Other raids are taking place simultaneously, which are focused on third-party suspects believed to be connected to the potential fraud.
So we're going along now this morning to see if we can arrest this guy and see what he's got to say.
The team has also obtained a warrant so they can search his house.
Today we're looking for evidence of association to see if he's got connections either with the other individuals that are being arrested elsewhere and also claims management company.
The IFED team never knows what lies in store on a raid, So today, the local police force is providing backup. They gather outside the house, taking care to cover all possible exits. Suspects have been known to flee or try and destroy evidence, so it's important to try and minimise the chance of this happening.
Good morning, we're police officers. Is Mr. please?
Yes, it's me.
I need to talk to him. Could you make him up for me, please?
Come on.
Is that okay? Can you come in?
It's early in the morning, and the suspect is just getting up. He's immediately arrested.
I understand that. So the time by my watch is now 2 minutes past 7. So if you just put on your trousers, but I need to watch it.
Yeah. So once you get dressed, we'll explain the rest to you, all right?
Yeah.
With the suspect located and detained within minutes, it's been a successful start to the raid. But the team needs to get the search underway as soon as possible.
If you tell us where your paperwork is what we're looking for.
Sorry?
Your paperwork, any insurance documents or anything like that.
It's much simpler and quicker if the suspect cooperates, but he initially seems hesitant.
All right, no problem. We'll search the whole place.
No. The papers are in. Have a look in if you can find anything which you are looking for.
Yeah.
In there. Anything.
Before being taken away for further questioning at a local police station, the suspect is asked to empty his pockets of anything he doesn't need.
Walk in.
Yeah.
It turns out he's carrying a huge bundle of cash.
We've found £1,000 in cash. We've spoken with the person who's been arrested.
The IFED team decides not to look into the money there and then, preferring to investigate it at a later date.
At this moment in time, because you're arrested, we're going to take you to the police station while we are here searching the premises. Anything we take, we'll record down and we'll leave a receipt here with you.
Yeah, no.
If we'll take him away then,
Okay.
we'll conduct our search, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Finally, the suspect is on his way. He'll be questioned at a local police station, and the interview will form an important part of the investigation. Meanwhile, the search gets underway in earnest inside the property. The team don protected gloves so that they don't contaminate any potential evidence.
Okay, gentlemen, we know what we're looking for, yeah? Yeah. Any sort of documentation.
All right, we'll start upstairs then.
Okay. We're looking for things that associate him with the accident that we're investigating. We're also looking for articles that will associate him with the others who have been arrested. Diaries, hopefully, telephones, storage devices that may have the other suspects' details on them as well. We may have sketch plans of accidents that have been induced, and anything really that may link him with that type of lifestyle. That's the vehicle that was involved in.
DC Declan Malone immediately makes a useful discovery.
Yeah, I've just found a DVLA form, which is the taxi that was involved in the collision. It's a copy of that, which ties him into the vehicle.
It's important to back up the case with supporting documentation. There's also a copy of a report made to the local council about the accident at the centre of the case.
It ties him in with the occurrence that we're investigating. There's nothing on its own that's going to hang it. He obviously, if he maintains his story, that it was a genuine accident, that's the kind of thing that we would expect to see.
It seems that this isn't the first personal injury claim connected to the suspect.
It's only a previous claim that he'd made for personal injury that he hadn't pursued.
The vehicle at the centre of the case is parked outside the residence, and it's not long before it too yields possible evidence.
We're actually looking for documentation from insurance companies. We're also looking for mobile phones which may contain evidence. And as you can see, there's two in the glove box of this vehicle.
It's just a handwritten letter describing an accident where a cyclist rode into a car. It forms part of the investigation and might lead to further inquiries that need to be investigated at a later date.
Back inside, there's further potential evidence that the suspect has been involved in previous insurance claims.
Yeah, we've got a few bits and pieces that obviously tie him in into the vehicle, and we've got some other documentation we found where the vehicle has been involved in a previous similar accident that it would seem as though it's been paid out for.
It's just reference another road traffic collision that happened. It looks like he's a witness to it. So it may be nothing, but it's obviously another road traffic collision around the similar sort of time to the road traffic collision that we were looking at. And we'll be able to find the paperwork for it and just check and see exactly what it was all about.
IFED is turning up evidence of a number of previous collisions. The information will be fed into the investigation to see how it fits into the bigger picture. DC Malone then finds something concerning the suspect's financial situation.
Indicates the amount of debt that he's in, really.
The search is drawing to a close, and DC Declan Malone reflects on how the raid has gone.
We managed to arrest the person that we were after. We've conducted a search of his home address. We've come up with some documentation that links him to the vehicle that was involved in the report-induced collision. We've also got some documentation that shows that vehicle was involved in other collisions previously. We'll just see what he's got to say with regard to the accident. He'll be bailed after we've interviewed him, and he'll be interviewed on another occasion when all the available evidence will be put to him.
It's been a long day, but the search has turned up a variety of potential evidence. IFED is determined to win the fight against fraud, and will do whatever it takes to stop criminals whose greed adds to the rising cost of insurance policies, an offence that costs all of us money and endangers the lives of innocent road users. Claims handlers in the next case were immediately alerted by the short space of time between motor insurance being taken out and a claim being made. Richard Davies is head of fraud at AXA UK.
We first heard about the policy around about 20 to 4 on the 24th of November, so less than 12 hours afterwards we had an accident reported to us. When we've got a small gap between a policy being taken out and a claim being reported, it often rings alarm bells inside an insurer.
As part of the claims procedure, the policyholder was asked to describe the accident.
They clipped the wing mirrors of another car that they were passing, and then in reversing back to talk to the person they'd had an accident with, they collided with another vehicle, and that had caused the vehicle to roll over.
It was a serious accident that had caused a lot of expensive damage to several vehicles. The investigation into the claim revealed further cause for concern.
The credit card payment which we took to pay for the policy bounced.
It was then that the insurer was alerted to a piece of evidence which blew apart the claimant's story: CCTV.
When we saw the footage, we thought this was a very strange accident. We don't see accidents like that very often at all. The CCTV footage actually came from the third party whose vehicle had been damaged as our policyholder reversed back into them. They worked in an education institution which had CCTV cameras at the doors, and the timestamps on that film told us when and where the accident actually occurred.
The accident had been reported to the insurer on the 25th of November. The claimant said the accident had happened the day before, on the 24th of November at 3:45, just 5 minutes after the policy had been taken out at 3:40. However, the CCTV told a different story.
The timestamp on that said the accident took place at 3:15 on the 24th of November. So in essence, the accident has taken place before the policy existed.
The next step was for the company to go back to the claimant with the CCTV evidence.
When we challenged the policyholder about this, they failed to respond to any of the questions that we asked them. We sent her a questionnaire and we've yet to receive any response.
Needless to say, the insurers didn't pay out on the policy.
This was a really bold attempt at insurance fraud. The policyholder knew they didn't have a policy. They took it out knowing that they were going to submit a claim, and we're very lucky to have caught them at it.